What's going on, guys? My name is Wade with TechDaily. So when I set out to review a device like this Samsung Galaxy S21 FE, for example, I tend to try and list at least a few specific and unique reasons why someone should consider it. Those reasons could be the price or the overall value versus the competition, a unique set of features maybe, or software support. It could be anything. And in thinking about that with this S21 FE, I came to the conclusion that there really isn't even one reason to buy this phone. And that's hard for me to say. The S20 FE was no doubt the best device Samsung had put out in like the last 5 years. We were all eagerly awaiting the release of the S21 FE last year, but it didn't come. Not until the middle of January this year. Probably 3 or 4 months too late. I know that doesn't sound like much, but in terms of product release cycles, that's a significant delay. And to make matters worse, the S21 FE was also announced not even a month before Samsung's S22 flagship lineup, which we all knew was coming. When you put all that together, I think you can see the problem. This new S21 FE kept S20 FE owners waiting, perhaps a little too long. And if they're into yearly upgrades, they likely went with something else. That something else could have been this, the flagship S21 from last year. It's about a year old, but of course it's still better than the S21 FE, and you can snag this flagship device now for $500 on Amazon if you want, and especially now that the S22s are on their way. And speaking of pricing, let me just break this down further because it's pretty eye-opening. The S21 FE is technically a $700 phone. There were a couple deals when it first came out, but that's the full retail price now. The flagship S21, like I said, is about a $500 device renewed. It really isn't sold new anymore, but it's a better phone, of course. It's the flagship version. And when you make that comparison price-wise, obviously it doesn't make any sense to pay more for less. And at least right now, as I'm filming this video, the brand new flagship S22 is discounted to $799. So you could literally get the newest, latest, full-fledged, feature-packed flagship phone for just $100 more than the S21 FE. This really throws a wrench into the whole S21 FE's value proposition. Because of the timing of its release, it's basically getting squeezed out by better phones at better prices. So in my opinion, you can kind of cross off pricing and value as potential reasons for getting it. When we talk specs and features, I'll dive deeper into this in just a minute. The S21 FE is a great phone to use. It's a very capable and dependable flagship caliber device, but objectively, it's the lesser phone compared to the S21 flagship, a few notches down from the new S22. And really, when we stack it up against the S20 FE as a potential one-for-one upgrade, you just don't really get that much more. The screen is basically the same, the processor is only marginally better, there's the same storage and RAM options, though you actually lose the SD card slot in going with the S21 FE. The cameras are basically the same, the speakers, the fingerprint sensors, battery, charging speeds. Aside from the slightly different rear housing and 1/10 of an inch display size difference, the S20 FE and S21 FE are fundamentally almost the same. It's a marginal upgrade at best. If you want some more noticeable improvements, jumping to the flagship S21 will get you there, or obviously the S22, of course. So again, to me, the S21 FE just doesn't deliver a significant boost in specs, performance, or features when you start to compare. Maybe I'm missing something here, and feel free to chime in if I am, but in all the ways that I analyze a smartphone when I review it, and in comparing it to similar devices that you might consider too, I just don't really see how this S21 FE offers anything unique or different or value focused. And really, it's not an issue with the phone itself. It's strictly just a product of the delay in release and the other Samsung devices that you could get now instead. As a phone itself, the S21 FE is solid from start to finish. I think it's a very attractive looking phone. It mimics the flagship S21, of course. The decent sized 6.4-inch display is great for watching movies or videos, and simultaneously, it's also the right form factor for comfortable one-handed use. That's what I really like. The viewing experience is great too. The display is a beautiful dynamic AMOLED 2X display. It is a 2400 by 1080 resolution resolution, crams in 401 pixels per inch, which is plenty sharp for its size. There's HDR10+ support now, really bold, it's really colorful, and quite a bit brighter too than maybe the S20 FE, so I guess that is a slight improvement. It's also super responsive, with the full 120 Hz refresh rate. The phone feels very fast with every touch, tap, and swipe. I actually think the display alone really makes this phone great, but at the same time, it's not exactly unique or special to this device in particular. Still though, it is a standout feature nonetheless. The S21 FE is also arguably a flagship caliber device when it comes to the specs and performance. Powering this thing is the top tier 2021 specs, like the Snapdragon 888 5G chipset and Adreno 660 GPU. You get the choice of 6 or 8 gigs of RAM as well. Altogether, certainly flagship internals, and in real world usage, this is about as fast and as powerful of a phone as you can buy. One of the advantages, of course, in going with the S21 FE is you're going to get at least a couple more years of Android versions and security updates. Maybe Samsung will throw on a couple extra months since the release of the phone was delayed anyway, but for the software support and for gaming and for work and for everything else, the overall experience here is a top tier Samsung smartphone that can cut through just about everything and is very easy to use and very familiar. And honestly, like I said, if we're looking at this phone just on its own, $700 for these kinds of specs is a pretty good deal, all things considered. This used to be a $1,000 plus kind of setup, so the value is still sort of there, but that's only if you ignore all the other Samsung phones I already mentioned. Also, for me, battery life on this phone has been really good. You get a 4,500 milliamp battery inside, which is a smidge smaller than a lot of other phones nowadays that seem to be pushing 5,000, but that yielded me some 12 to 13 hours of screen time at least most days with 120 Hertz enabled. I don't necessarily push my devices that hard, but it's a full day phone and then some for me. The 25-watt charging speeds aren't pushing any limits either, but an hour plugged in can usually get me back up to 100%. And the wireless charging and reverse wireless charging features, while not too useful for me personally, at least round out the battery and power feature set to ensure this phone offers everything. The camera setup and capabilities overall are also really good on the S21 FE. They weren't necessarily upgraded from the S20 FE, and there also aren't any super crazy flagship features like 8K video recording, but snapping pictures and capturing video with this phone is great. And for 99% of people, I think you're going to get a ton out of the setup. With simple point and shoot shots with the main lens, the S21 FE captures a ton of detail overall. You still get that bright, colorful, punchy look that Samsung tends to offer, but visually the pictures look great. And between the telephoto lens and the ultra wide, you've got a complete camera setup that you can use for any and all scenarios. The camera setup as a whole is also one of those areas that separates it from the likes of Samsung's A series, for example, and brings it much closer to the flagship setup, just without those extreme features that I mentioned earlier. But like I've explained a million times before, as good as this setup is on this phone, you don't get anything more or that much better than the S20 FE. And if you want those super special high-end flagship capabilities, 8K video, super zoom, all that stuff, you can opt for the S21 flagship or new S22 flagship, and you're likely gonna end up getting better value for your money. Now, if it felt like I sort of rushed through the review part of this video, I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, this is a Samsung smartphone with all the same features and specs that we've seen before. You know what you're getting here. You know what to expect. And there really isn't anything special or unique to this phone in particular. As just a standalone device, ignoring all other factors and comparisons, the S21 FE is a top-tier, feature-packed, modern, current Samsung device with all the specs and capabilities you want. You'll get years of software support. It's definitely a multi-year investment, and technically, it is priced competitively. The value should be there, but the bottom line is that this phone is not the only device on the market. Far from it. It's not even the only device from Samsung in its price range right now, and therein lies the issue. When reviewing smartphones, I always have to make the price comparison, the value comparison, the feature by feature comparison to other devices on the market, simply because there are other options out there in the world. Everyone compares everything anyway. And in the case of the S21 FE, all those other options, like the flagship S21 or the new S22, are either cheaper or they offer significantly more features for only a little bit more money. If you come across a good deal on the S21 FE, maybe it's $100 or $150 off somewhere, or maybe you can get it discounted from your carrier, you should still get the phone if you want it. It's a great device for sure, but if you're gonna be doing even the slightest bit of comparison shopping, I really think you'll find that the S21 FE is simply not as good of a value as it could have been or as it should have been, and that's really a shame. But what do you guys think? Is there any reason to buy this phone? Maybe I missed something. Let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts, of course. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video though. Be sure to follow TechDaily on Twitter and subscribe to the TechDaily YouTube channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys later.